Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a little sidetrack of palaver all about the Son of the King. That is right. Hail to the hill! Which, yes, I do these here on the Horror Show Studio set list just for the sheer fact that, you know, I've done some of Psy King's Son coverage on there, and it just didn't feel right. It felt like it needed to have some sense of separance and whatnot. And so, yes, I am here to talk about a graphic novel and a novella. So, that being the adaptation here of that. Yeah, we're talking Thumbprint today. And finally got the chance to check this out as we were taking our recent trip to Charlotte. The cool thing is, I almost spent a ton of money trying to track down the novella proper and its initial release status and stuff like that. And luckily enough, when this hardcover was released by IDW, I believe, yes indeed, and if I'm not mistaken, they're the same who have done both Tales from the Dark Side and Lock and Key stuff with Joe Hill. So Steve's son has a very prolific comic output, you know, even aside from amazing novels like Heart-Shaped Box, Horns, Nosferatu, great collections like 20th Century Ghosts, and so I have not delved into his comic work as much, and it really entails Lock and Key and then a few adaptations of other projects and stuff, one of which being this. And so Thumbprint, if I'm going to just give like overall impression, as we all too often do here in the you know, just framing devices and whatnot, I appreciated it, but it's really it was very much like when Joe has gone like in I don't know, Strange Weather into the very, very harshly political and social realm, which it just doesn't speak to me as directly, I guess, because I'm not personally into politics and into even reviewing and covering stories that take that sort of slanted approach, and this one most definitely does. It was originally a novella, and then it was adapted into this comic book. The illustrations, though, from Jason Cheramela, I believe, and then we also had some work from Vic Malhotra. They're very, very good. I have to show you some of this stuff because I really enjoyed the painted aspect that we got in here, and it especially worked well with some of like the carnage and the brutality. And the reason for that is because the whole story here is about Mallory. What's her? They all call her Mal, but yeah, Mal Grennan. And so she is discharged from the military for being a part of the Abu Ghraib, something like that. Anyway, this is real life shizzle, and this is where all of the different military from the United States that were maintaining this place where they would come and detain, you know, different people in the midst of the Iraqi conflict, and they were being horrendously tortured. And there were some absolutely disgusting photos that floated around of people with, you know, Iraqi men completely naked and in midst of different acts of, you know, like torture and yet more so not like hardcore. We're not talking Saw like hostile type torture, but we're talking demeaning and demasculizing torture, and it's really, really harsh, especially in their community when coming from women. And there were women doing it at that particular facility, at that particular site, and one of whom was Mal. And it's really interesting when you correspond how it was adapted with how it was originally written, because the character of Mal, much more unsavory in the source material. In the novella, which was written a few, like a short time before, I can't remember if it was like a couple of years or whatever, but the basis for the storytelling was something that I was trying to track down, and then when I saw it was included in this along with the graphic novel, I was like, oh, dope, I can get the source material, then just do that compare and contrastness. And yeah, Mal is a much worse character in this, and so after she is discharged and sent back and stuff, her father has just died. It's really sad in that regard. She's back working at this same bar that she used to. She has a coworker who is married and yet super trying to get in her pants. There's one key difference in the story that epitomizes the character of Mal in one form versus the other. So there is a local customer who is a regular at this bar that she has returned and is working at since getting back from from her time in the Middle East. And so he gets super faded and he passes out, like literally door open, half in, half out of his vehicle, right? And so his legs are hanging out, his arms and his upper torso are in. What does Mal decide to do in the novella, in the written source material? She goes up and she steals his wedding ring. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And she takes it with her, and, you know, the other guy is like, I can't believe you did that. That is the most effed up thing ever. And they make her character more sympathetic in the actual, graphic novelization in the IDW comic, and it's the other person who has been hitting on her that she works with, the other bartender who's unsavory and kind of a slimeball shizhead, whatever. He's the one who steals it in the adaptation in the comic. And so it does change the dynamic. It also kind of hints at a few places here and there as to who this person is who is sending her these clues, these thumbprints, which is where the story actually gets its title. So thumbprint comes from the fact that she starts getting these anonymous letters, presumably from somebody who knows the extent of the nastiness that she perpetrated and narrowly avoided full prosecution for, because of the fact that all of the different photos that were circulating, they did not show like her face. It was like, okay, in these states of mid-demeaning torture, whatever, and it was like legs and torso and up to certain points, maybe like lower half of a face, but nothing where she could be fully identifiable. And so that's why she just was discharged, as opposed to facing serious criminal charges of craziness. And that's really where we're at with this character, in the fact that her life has really gone awry ever since she gave herself over to that sort of mentality when she was, on her tour. And then she comes back and somebody starts harassing and poking and prodding and sending thumbprints of different people. And thumbs actually become a very key thing in what this person who is messing with her has done, who he has gone after, and things like that. So it is definitely not a bad story by any means. I appreciated the approach and the thought, and it's just it really boils down to the PTSD subject matter, and that not being as compelling to me, and some of the stuff that she ends up having to face. And I must say, I appreciated the elements of mystery of who is sending the envelopes to her, more so in the novella than we really get many more hints and stuff about the nature of what's transpiring in the graphic novel. And so, those were very deliberate, storytelling choices that were changed. And what is visual adaptation without change from source text? It is inevitable, and it's usually deliberate when switching storytelling to a different medium, and in a lot of ways it has to happen. But there were a few here that I really, Mal is just much more of, she's a crappier character, just a worse person in the novella than she is in the comics adaptation and stuff. But I do really love that artwork, as I mentioned, from Jason and Mick, and the covers are great. It's got just a very, very dark storytelling aspect. They do a lot of flashbacks, so they do flashback indeed to her time and her tour there, and some of the atrocities that she took part in. And once again, it's just tough to hear about these things, and even more so than that, they just don't captivate my attention. I really am a child at heart when it comes to the fantasy of storytelling, and the desire and the interest in an otherworldly aspect, and reflecting this sort of nastiness that we saw in the real world, especially with all of the social and political leanings and stuff that was associated with it. It did not do it for me as much. But if you are into those sort of subjects and you like that sort of storytelling, if you're into, I don't know, I wouldn't go so far as like a Black Hawk Down, but I would even say some of the storytelling that we saw you know, casualties of war and stuff like that, things that were set in the Vietnam War, and there were so many comparisons to both of those conflicts, you know, both Iraq in the early 2000s and, you know, Vietnam in the late 60s and early 70s and stuff. If that sort of stuff is your jam, and you're cool with seeing that nasty underbelly of how that sort of conflict corrupts and makes and brings out the worst in people, and also just the collateral damage that it leaves behind, you will probably really appreciate Thumbprint more than I did. I'm not saying I hated it. I definitely did not, but right when I got off the plane and I told Cecil I read it, and I gave him more of a heads up about what it was about, we were originally both going to read this together and flesh it out. And yeah, we've worked together long enough where both of our tastes are pretty evident, and in this particular sector, it's neither of ours, in all honesty. And yeah, and being Joe Hill, I still wanted to at least give some precedence and some coverage. And it's very cool with this release that IDW was able to reprint the novella and also have the comic book in its entirety, and, you know, all the different alternate covers and things like that. And another one that he almost ordered it separately, and then I got a hold of him and I was like, dude, it's also included in this collection, so cancel your order if possible, you know, do not get to it. And it's a one-shot short story that Joe Hill also did with the same guy, Jason Chiaramella, but it's called Kodiak, and it's a medieval story, ironically. So this could easily fit in the Dark Tower verse, you know, and this could be, you know, one of the baronies or whatever. And it's about these two young boys who are spying on another guy who allegedly fought a bear at one particular point. And it's very, very short, and the dialogue is kind of scant, but the illustrations are terrific. And I think this is where we have, okay, so this one has art by Nat Jones, coloring by none other than J Photo. Shout out to our dude. Awesome awesomeness. But and he actually gives a little introduction here too, which is about the burden of this is actually the best part of Kodiak, is hearing Joe give this introduction about the burden of adapting somebody else's work and trying to be faithful to it but still make it your own. It's very fascinating. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 different paragraphs, and he just talks about the creative, just, I don't know, paradigm and the problem that is trying to add your own identity to a story when it has been handed to you and you're supposed to adapt it. And with the whole remake craze that's going on, the reinterpretation, as I personally prefer, yeah, I could see Jason having some issues here, but it's a very quaint and simple and short story, and they find out how this guy fought this bear and how he was trying to seek the affections of this girl at her birthday party. She's becoming a woman, and the brother is like, no, I'm gonna throw you to the bear because you're hitting on my sister. And it's kind of, yeah, there's just not a lot to it. But the illustrations, I mean, as you can, hopefully you can see kind of okay. Yeah, look at that bear. That bear's kind of dope, man. I gotta admit. And people, I don't know, different people were placing bets on, you know, who was gonna win in these situations. But I like his illustrations of the people and everything. And it's a nicely drawn and colored book, but the story is just way too simple. And so for that reason, I'm really glad that, yeah, our fearless leader here and my homeboy Cecil did not shell out like what probably would have been the equivalent of buying a few issues of a comic for an out-of-print one-shot. That is also included here. So that's about all that I have to say about Thumbprint. You know, if you like that sort of military storytelling and just all of the baggage that it entails, and that can come back with you, and it does really revert into a horror thriller in the back half. And that's with me not trying to spoil anything, but as a whole, it's really a character examination about everything that Mal took with her after coming back, the bullet that she narrowly avoided for the horrible things that she did while she was over there. And some of the dialogue, especially where they're translating her, you know, talking Arabic, and just all of the social insults about, you know, yes, I took your wife and, you know, I made her a lesbian and all this other stuff, and she said you had a small dick, and just horrible things like this. It's like, the caliber of insults that they were mustering for these Iraqis, and I'm sure this is based on very true to life just interactions and whatnot. It's rough. It really is. And I think it just didn't sit well with me, the nasty nature of everything that was going down there. And plus, I'm not as into those sort of stories anyway, but it did accurately, at least from all of the different, you know, CNN and whatever else that I watched over the years, seem to capture, you know, the true terrors of what was transpiring over there. And Kodiak is just a nice little bonus, as is the Joe Hill novella. So I've been Jaime and Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and my personal YouTube, where if you just do a search for In Fuegotainment, you can find me on there doing stuff besides the scarific. And also, if you have not liked, shared, subscribed here, hit the bell so you get all of the notifications about the various episodes that we do every single week, including a program that I love to death called Hail to Stephen King. This is a run to the hill kind of side segment of sorts. But yeah, Hail to Stephen King is my coverage of the family proper. We're nearly at 150 episodes, and I've been doing it for over 2 years. So it is a pleasure and an honor to be a part of it here, and to be talking about a Joe Hill work, even if I didn't truly adore the hell out of it. I didn't love Strange Weather either. You know, Aloft was amazing, but everything else on there I thought was just okay. So I'm still going to stick with Joe Hill, and you can look forward to Cecil and myself doing coverage of Lock and Key, the entire series proper, which is all of it's the only comic stuff of his that I have left to truly sink my teeth into, and I'm very, very stoked for it. And also, how could I forget? I had a reminder from the showrunner just as I'm saying this right now. Also the Cape, because there is the Cape proper, which is a continuation of the short story from the 20th Century Ghosts, and then we also have a flashback, I believe it's Cape 1968 or 1969, something like that. And then there is a new third series that Joe is working on currently as well, that just expands the mythology of this kind of reckless decaf anti-hero. So yeah, lots of Joe badassness coming very soon that we look forward to bringing you. So absolutely, biggest thanks to everybody. And if this tickles your fancy, yes, please do check out Thumbprint. And so until we get you with more coverage, not Wheel of Ka in this particular case, but yes, must run to the hill. And yes, I look forward to bringing you more of that Joe Hill coverage with Cecil. And until then, everyone, remember, stay scared and read Joe Hill, especially if you're into this kind of approach.